Your Olympic hero has arrived. It's true, it's true.
You're watching Fugitive Red Eye, and welcome to another review. I just finished Severance Season 2, so now I'm going to review it. Originally, this was recorded as a raw review, much like the first season review I did, but then I just kind of didn't like how it turned out, so then I half-assedly threw it together with screenshots and editing, and then I debated releasing it at all. But here it is. I'm going to chime in occasionally with some new things to enhance it here and there, but here it is. So Season 2 is a total of 10 episodes. I think Season 1 was 9 episodes. And this came out 3 years after Season 1. Now, I did a video talking about the first episode or two of Season 2. Obviously my theory was correct, as most people probably also were theorizing. It was hardly that I was the only one thinking of it, because it is, in fact, what turned out to be true. That Helly was, of course, not Helly, and it was kind of obvious that she was Helena. But as far as that goes, and obviously there'll be plenty more spoilers in this, so you have been warned. The episodes themselves were a lot more experimental this season than they were in Season 1. There's that one where they're in the woods, and then Irving tries to drown Helena to get them to switch back to Helly. There's the stuff with the goats, which I'm glad actually had a purpose, because it was really fucking weird that they were, like, breeding goats. And the purpose is this fucking company's, like, weird and cultish. And the company's a lot more all-encompassing. Like, you really start to see the scope of it in Season 2, where it kind of has, like, its fingers controlling everything, right? And, of course, there's the whole thing with Gemma, Mark's wife, who's, like, Miss Casey as well, and is also trapped inside. And they've severed her many, many times. Like, they've given her 25 different innies. That's what Cold Harbor is that the last one is her last innie. And then once that's done, they were going to kill her. Ritualistic thing, I think, but also, like, maybe to just see what they can do with this fucking technology. I don't know. A lot of weird, culty stuff, but at least they actually did have some payoffs to a lot of things. Now, with Bert and Irving, Christopher Walken and that guy from Transformers, who were in a gay relationship in Season 1, they did some interesting stuff where they made it seem almost like Bert was going to be, like, antagonistic to Irving, because it turns out that Bert was a guy who would drive people to these places. They don't really elaborate, but basically he was kidnapping people for Lumen was the vibe I was getting. The payoff to that was the one thing I felt was kind of lackluster. Largely because they set up all these interesting plot points around Irving, right? His innie's like this super dedicated to Lumen, super into the fucking cult, buys into all the brainwashing kind of thing, and then his outie is somehow against it with all this weird stuff he's doing where he seems to have knowledge about Lumen and the paintings he's doing, and he's a lot more intriguing that way. And so the juxtaposition of the two polar opposites almost, but then of course his innie gets disillusioned in Season 2, which is really interesting. So the way that it pays off, I just don't feel like it's a satisfactory conclusion to that arc, so I really hope they do more with the character, and I'm sure they will. Because he just kind of puts he puts Irving on a train and says, "I can't know where you're going. Go live your life," or some shit like that. Because Irving was an interesting character in many regards. Like, he was the one painting the hallway, the black hallway. He was the one painting that. There was a lot of intrigue to me as to what his beef with Lumen was outside. Like, I guess he just was anti-Lumen. But how did he know about that hallway in the first place, right? It was just in his subconscious. You never really find out a whole lot about his outie personality. And so that better not be the end of that arc, because that was far more interesting. That's a really anticlimactic arc, if that's just how they ended, if he just leaves and doesn't come back. I feel like they can't do that. Dylan had an interesting thing where his wife was allowed to come visit his innie, and then she kissed him, and then she told outie Dylan about it, and there was a little bit of conflict with that. That resolved itself pretty quickly, and Dylan tried to request to quit to his outie, but then his outie's like, "I'm glad knowing you're there, don't quit," or "You can if you want, but I want you to have the chance." And then at the end, when Mark actually goes in, there's a scene where he talks to his outie, and like him and his innie talk, like his outie and innie, and they talk at this birthing cabin, which was introduced in Season 1 as well. And the way they talk is they record videos back and forth on a camcorder to talk to each other. And they're talking back and forth. There's the thing where he helps Gemma escape. And then after Gemma escapes, Mark's innie just runs back to Helly. Because, again, once he left, Lumen's finished, right? So then chances are Mark's innie's gone, so he just goes back in with Helly. I don't know what the hell they're going to do in there, because Lumen's going to get shut down either way, right? Now, most likely. Or if it doesn't, then there's no way in hell they're going to let him continue to operate. Obviously, all the stuff I thought was bait and switches from Lumen, obviously were. Cobell went turncoat, which I found interesting. So, Mark's boss from the first season, Miss Cobell, went turncoat and helped him against Lumen and actually gave him information and helped convince his innie to go along with the plan, even though it meant getting rid of all the innies, right? And Mark also reintegrated this season, which was interesting. He didn't fully reintegrate. He just saw flashes between the personalities where he'd see like flashes of memories from the other personality. Overall, it was an interesting season. I think I do slightly prefer Season 1, the simplicity of it. Season 2 is a lot more experimental. A lot more crazy shit happens, which is interesting. The season finale was pretty good, although the ending is, of course, a cliffhanger. There is going to be a Season 3. So there's some interesting stuff with it. Frankly, I do have some criticisms of Season 2. For instance, Mark's personality seems less defined. Now, I guess you could argue that's due to certain revelations, that's due to the reintegration process, and that's due to him speaking with his outie and things like that. The character seemed a lot more well-defined as far as personality, but maybe he's still trying to figure shit out. But anyway, in Season 1, he did seem a lot more well-defined. But again, his whole world has been shattered, so I guess you could argue that's to be expected to some degree. There was that one episode that was like all told from Gemma's perspective, which was introducing us to the concept that she had all these different innies. And then it was a pretty cool twist to reveal that was what they were, the data that they were refining. But there's a lot of questions still, so it makes sense there's going to be another season. But overall, pretty solid season. I would say comparable to the first, although I do think I slightly prefer the simplicity of the first and the juxtaposition between the workplace and the mystery and stuff. The mystery is definitely still there in the second season, just as much. But it is definitely a lot crazier. It's a lot more surreal. A lot more weird stuff happens. So I feel like it's probably going to be divided which season people prefer. One thing that I absolutely loved about Season 2 was there was a lot more of Milchick. So that was really cool. Obviously, I'm just coming off. This is my first impressions, so my opinion might evolve over time. That's all I really had to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this raw review. Have a good one. Toodle.
You take forever to say nothing.
Subscribe. Defeat it to Red Eye.